Hello everyone, and this is the moment you've all been waiting for. In the previous video, I started talking about that we're gonna pivot a little bit. We're gonna try to do this a little bit differently. Let me explain what I mean by that. Right now we have a keyboard, and in the previous video we played around with the create natural note names, and those are the note names that we want to put in these octaves. But I thought about it. Maybe it's not such a good idea to use octaves. Maybe we should just stuff all of the keys into the main SVG or some container and then calculate the width from that. Because right now, as you know, we are calculating, we have an octave is always from C to B, and then another one starts in C and B, because we want this piano to start on any of the white keys and continue any other of the white keys. So let's say we want to start it on a G here, and we want to put a couple of octaves in between, and then we want to end it on a D, E, or F, whatever we want to do. And right now we're using the number 560 because every single key is 80 pixels wide. And if you multiply that by 7 keys, then you have that number 560. So every time we move over an octave, we move it over 560 pixels. But what if we only have 4 keys or 3 keys in one octave? Well, my plan was initially to just calculate that on the fly as well. So if we say we want to start on a G, and then we have A, and then we have B. So this would only be 240 pixels because they're 80 pixels wide, and times 3, that's 240. So I would tell the computer that the first octave should only be that wide, and then we would do the same for the last octave, and in between we would just put normal octaves from C to B, from C to B, and so on and so forth. And you know, the transform translate that we're using on each octave, then instead of having that set to 560, we would just calculate however many pixels we want to move it along. But that's proved to be a little bit complicated. And I tried to figure it out, but then I thought all of a sudden, why do we even need octaves? I don't know why I thought of that in the first place, but that was probably in my mind like an idea that would simplify everything for me. But I think that it's probably easier if we just take all of the keys that we create in any range and we just stuff them all into an SVG, and then we just calculate the width of the keys times amount of keys, and then we actually have the width for the view box. So let's try and do that. There are many things to do here, so I'm just going to start with the simple stuff. We're not going to need the number of octaves anymore. We're just going to figure that out on the fly. And also the octave width, we're not going to need that anymore. But before I delete those, I want to add some other variables, and then we'll clean it up later on, because this is what we're going to use to calculate this stuff later. We want to have the white key width, because as you can see down here, you know that it's 80 pixels. So it's 80 here. It's not nice to have it hard-coded. It's nice to have it in a variable so we can use that. I'm going to make it constant, and it's going to be white key width. And that is, as we know, 80. And then we have the piano height, which is 400, that we also use down here, right here. I'm gonna type out const and just piano height equals 400. Okay, so now we have that. The next thing, well, actually, just because I just created these variables, then I'm gonna use them just so I don't forget. We might delete some of this code later on, but everywhere it says 80 and it has to do with the width of the white keys, I'm just gonna substitute that with the variable. And we have another one here. And also I can see we have 160 here, and that is twice as much as a white key. So I can just go ahead and multiply it by 2. And also up here, it's the half, so I can just divide it by 2. Okay. So I don't think there are any more I can change here. I'm going to save it and see if it still works. So that's just a little refactoring, and a little bit, it gets a little bit more flexible if we want to change the width and the height of the piano and the keys. We're going to use that later on though to calculate the width, because we are going to find out how many keys are in between here, as we already did in the previous video. And then we are going to multiply that by 80 and set the width of the view box right here to that number, to that value. Actually, I could also use the piano height right here. I'm not going to do that because we're going to take this in just a moment and put it into a different, we're going to create it dynamically. But another thing that I just want to check here, if I go back to the browser and the console, we don't have anything here, I thought. So get all natural notes. I just want to console log this. All right, so if I save this and I go to the browser, we should be able to see this array of arrays. If I open this one up, you can see we have the first one, the first octave here, the nodes of the first octave, and the rest in between, and then we have the last octave here. So we just want all of the numbers in the same array. So if we go back to the code here, in our method called get all natural nodes, all we actually have to change here, we still want to keep all of these values because we're going to need to use those. So inside this for loop here, that where we're handling the first octave. First, we still want to handle the first octave, but we are not gonna put it into this variable anymore. I'm just gonna take that and delete this, and then we're gonna slice the natural nodes array still from the first node position. And instead of mapping it, because map that returns an array, and we don't want to put arrays into that array, all natural nodes array that we have up here, we just want to add the numbers. So I'm gonna use a for each instead. And instead of, whoops, that looks funny. Okay, it's for each. And instead of returning it, because we don't need to do that anymore, I'm just going to take this one here and cutting it. And we're just going to actually just push the node name plus octave number directly into that array like this. And I have a semicolon too many here. But that will do, it will still do the same thing. It'll slice the first natural nodes array, and then from the first node position, and then for each of those values you have from there, then we will just push them directly into the all natural nodes array. And the last octave will be kind of the same thing. So we are just gonna take this like this, and it's gonna be the same, but we're going to run a for each. And then instead of doing that, we're just going to take this here, cut that out, paste it in up here, and take this and push it. Delete the return here. And so that should work. And the last one, that will be exactly the same thing. We don't need to map it here. We are just going to take the natural nodes, run a for each on that. And we're gonna need the node name here as well. And then inside here, we will do the same thing, all natural nodes. We're gonna push into it the node name, and then add on the octave number. That should be it. Then we don't need this stuff down here anymore. So we can do this, and then we have some problems here. We don't need this at all, right? Okay. So that should be it. It's gonna return all natural nodes. I'm gonna save this, and we're going back to the browser, and we have what we expect here. So we have now we don't have an array of arrays representing the different octaves, but we just have an array of all the different notes that we want to put in our piano. Let's just test this just for fun. I'm gonna change this to G2 and just see if that works. Okay, that works. So we're starting on G2 and continuing and changing octaves here. So far, so good. It works. So now that we can do that, we want to get it up in our setup piano. We want to make a variable here with all the natural notes. The first thing I'm going to do is make a constant, and we are going to call it all natural notes. And that's going to be equal to, of course, our this.get all natural notes. And then we're just going to pass in the range that we set up above. We can change that later on. We can change it to use the let keyword instead if we want to do that. But anyways, now we will get all of the natural notes in this one. And those are the notes that we just had a look at here. So what we want also here, we want to set the width. You know, we set the width of the view box up here. But the thing is, we have just had the number of octaves times octave width that we set up here, and that has been the way that we have created that or calculated that before. But we don't need these anymore. We don't have any octaves anymore. So now down here, instead, I want to calculate the width, And we know that we can, I'm going to make one called piano width. Set that equal to, so that would be, we get this array of all the natural nodes, and we've just got the length of that. And we multiply that by the white key width that we set up above before. Then we actually get the number that we need to substitute up here. But of course we get it up here. Every time we set up the piano, it's not automatically updated up here in the SVG. So what I want to do is I want to take this just as we did with the keys and the groups before. I want to create this dynamically with JavaScript. So let's do that now actually. I'm just going to split this up so we can see two screens so I can have a look at this while I play around down here. So we need to make another method so we can create the main SVG. So I'm just going to add it down here, and let's just call it create main SVG. So what we need to accept here, of course, we're going to set this number up here. So we need to know the width of the whole piano. And we already set that up above in the create or in the setup piano method. So we're just going to accept the piano width here. And then of course we also need the height, so we can set that. Right here it's 400 right now, so it's hard coded, but let's say that maybe we want to in the future make it a different height, then we can do that as well. So let's just call it piano height. Okay, and inside this method we want to create this this whole thing here. First we want to create the SVG, so let's do that. Const SVG. We still have this on our utilities object. So create SVG element, and we want to create an SVG element. Okay. So now we have that, and we can play around with that. So we can set some attributes on this. And let's see, we have a width, a viewbox, a version, XL namespace thing here, and another thing here that we need to set up. So let's do that now. I'm just going to fast forward this. Okay, so now we want to set the view box. All of these attributes that we are setting here are just basically the same as up here. So a width, view box, not view box yet, but version and all of these other things. And but now we want to set the view box, and we want to use this that we passed into this method to set the size of the view box. First of all, we're going to use template strings. So we're going to use backticks like this, and inside here we are going to have 0, 0, because we want to start at X and Y 0. So that's just still going to be hard coded. Don't worry about that. And then we want to get access to a variable name here, and that will be the number of octaves here, as you can see, but we don't really need that anymore because we don't work with octaves anymore. So instead we're going to take the piano width that we pass in up here. So that's going to be the first one. And then we need another space in between here, and then we need another one. And that one is going to be the height of it, so piano height. That's it. So now we should have created this one and set all the different attributes that we need. And then down here, of course, we will need to return it SVG. Okay, gonna close down this one here. And then if we go up to our setup piano, we don't really need this anymore. We can go ahead and delete this one. We also don't need this piano keyboard, which actually refers to this one in here, because we're just going to stuff everything directly in to the SVG. And yeah, and then we can also get rid of this. So let's see. Of course, right now it's not going to work, but let's, after we create our piano width here, we want to get the main SVG. So we're going to create that. And the way to do that, we are just going to say, hey, create this one. Let's call it SVG. It's on the same object, so we can create main SVG like this. And then we want to pass in the piano width and the piano height, which I think we set up here already. We did. It's 400, so we can do the same here. Where was I? Yeah, piano height. then this element, SVG element, will be created for us. Then of course we want to add the main SVG to the piano div that we grab all the way up here, and we already have a comment here, but let's take the piano and then append child. Okay, so we get an error here. We can see that we get not a number, and we also get piano keyboard is not defined. It would be nice to find out what this is right here, why we don't have this one. This one, I know why, because we don't need the octaves anymore in the setup piano. Let me just show you. We have this one here, and we don't have the octave anymore. We don't create those anymore, or let's see what we're gonna do anyways with that. But first of all, let's see the other one here, expected number, 0, 0, not a number, and then 400. So view box 0, 0, piano width and piano height. So what are we actually passing into this one? Let's see. Up here we are creating the SVG, the piano width, which is equal to piano width. We don't have the piano width. We have it right here. That's going to be the all natural notes, and it's going to be the length of all the natural notes, of course. So that's something I forgot. So of course, that should work now. Now we don't get that error, so now that should work. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes it's just going way too fast and I forget some stuff. I think I even mentioned that we needed the length of it before when we created this, but then I totally forgot about it. I apologize. Okay, let's move on here. Now we have that, and it has been appended, hopefully. Let's see if we look inside our elements here and we get rid of this, then we can see inside the piano we have the SVG. So it works, and it has been set to 2960, which should be correct if you think about it. But inside this SVG, we don't yet have anything, and we don't want to create any octaves and put in there anymore. So let's go back to our setup piano and see what we can do about that. So because we don't want these octaves anymore, let's just comment all of this out, or maybe even delete it. Yeah, let's do that actually. Let's just delete this whole thing so we don't have that in the way, and let's just start from scratch, because sometimes that's actually easier. I'm going to save this, and nothing's going to happen here. The only thing we have right now is the SVG that has been appended. So, but first of all, we want to create the white keys, or add the white keys after we've done this. I'm going to keep this, or I'm going to create it again. So add white keys. And the way we do that, first of all, we still need to have this white key position X, white key position X. I think it was called white key X position before, but it sounds better with white key position X. And we're going to start from 0. So that's exactly the same as we had before. And then we only need a for loop for the keys, not for the octave. So we're going to start with 0. And as long as I is less than the length of all the natural notes, which we have here actually. So all natural notes length. All natural notes length, then increment I. Okay, so in here we take all the natural notes from G2 to A7, and we're going to do something for each single one of them. And what are we going to do? Of course, we're going to create a key. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a key. Let's call it white key again. And this is just going to be this create key. That's going to be exactly the same thing as we had before. And the way we use that is we pass it an object, and inside this object, we set a class name. It's still going to be white key. So white key, and the next one is going to be the width, and the width is still the white key width, right? This one up here, it's 80, and the height is of course going to be the piano height. Okay, so now we have this one created. Then we want to set some attributes. We want to set the X attribute to the white key position X. So let's take the white key and then set attribute. And as I said, we want to set the X attribute, and the value of that is going to be the white key position X, which we will in a moment just increment, so it's not the same every single time around. Yeah, right here I'm gonna increment it, so white key position X is going to be incremented by plus equals the width of the white key, so white key width. It's right here. Okay, I'm gonna save that, and then of course we want to append to the SVG. So I'm gonna take the SVG and append the child. Whoops. And it's gonna be white key. And that way we should get a lot of white keys here. Let's have a look. And we do. We get all of the white keys here. It's wonderful. Let me close down all of this stuff. Okay, we still don't have the black keys. We're gonna take care of that in a little while. But also now we are creating these white keys based on this in the console, this one here that I'm still console logging. So we're creating the keys in this. We know that the first one will be a G2 and the last one here is gonna be an A7 right up here. So why not try to add these node names to the keys, or actually to a data attributes on the keys, on the elements themselves. So we have all of these rectangles with the class of white key, but we can also add a data attribute, and that data attribute can contain the name of the node. So that's pretty easy to do in this case here, as long as we're dealing with the white keys only. So let's go back to the code, and here before we increment anything, then we want to set an attribute. So we're going to set another attribute on the white key. What's going on here? Set attribute. And we want to set the data node name. So that's a data attribute that we can use in JavaScript and calculate stuff with. And yeah, use later, you'll see. Node name. And we want to set that node name to actually the ith position of the all natural nodes. So we're going to take the all natural nodes and then position I here. So that should hopefully work. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, now everything looks better. Let's save this and let's go to the browser and check it out. And as you see already down here, you can see that when I hover over these, you can see which one is selected up above, but you can also see that it has a data attribute of node name containing the node name. So now every single rectangle has information about what the name of the node is. So that's great. But we need to add the black keys as well. And actually, before we do that, I want to just get rid of this number of octaves and the octave width because we don't need that anymore. Let me just save it and go to the browser and see we don't get any errors. It still works. There are no errors because we don't need those anymore anywhere. So now that has been cleaned up, we can continue, and inside our setup piano we can add the black keys. And now we got to think a little bit, because we don't really know what the black keys are called, but we have some knowledge, and we're already using this natural nodes quite a lot. And if we go ahead up here and add some data for this, we know that we have if we take an octave from the beginning from C to B, then we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and we know that the sharp note names for those are C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. We don't really have an E sharp. We do, we can use that, but we're gonna simplify this a little bit, and you know, stuff like double accidentals like double sharps and double flats, and weird ones like E sharp. We're not gonna use that. We're just gonna use the most natural, most normal things, you know. But yeah, if I add another array and call it natural nodes sharps. So those are the sharps corresponding to the values up here. That's gonna be just another array. And it's going to contain the nodes that you can put a sharp on in the most natural way, if that makes any sense. So we know that we have a C sharp. So we're just going to take this C up here and we're going to put it here. So we know that C works pretty well with a sharp. We also know that a D works pretty well with a sharp. So we're going to add that. And we also know that an E is probably not too good with a sharp. E sharp, that's actually an F. So we don't want that. We just want to have an F sharp. So we're going to skip the E, put in the F, because F sharp is a nice sharp. And then, of course, we have the G, and we also have the A. And then the B, we don't really have a B sharp because that is enharmonic with a C. So far, so good. We're going to do the same thing for the flats. So it's going to be natural notes flats. And that's going to be equal to all the flats, or all the natural flat note names, if that makes any sense. So C flat, we don't really use that because the C flat will be enharmonic with the B that is an octave below the C. So we're gonna take the D instead because we have a D flat. That's nice. It's the same as a C sharp. So you can see these are going to be enharmonic. So a D sharp is going to be enharmonic with a D flat is going to be enharmonic with a C sharp, and so on and so forth. So the next one here, yes, that's going to be an E because an E flat is the same note as a D sharp. So we're going to continue here. Do we have an F flat? No, because that's an E. So we're continuing to G because we have a G flat. We also like to use A flats, and of course we also use B flats. Whoops, it's going to be a string. Okay, now we have this information, and now actually what we can do here is we can go through these arrays. So every time we go through all of our natural notes, we can check, well, what value does it correspond to here? And should I add a sharp note or a flat note? So let's have a look at how we do that. Down here in the add black keys, we still have this comment here. First, we need to have the position, the X position. So black key position X. And we're going to offset this to 60 to begin with, as you probably remember from the previous video. Then we are going to create a loop here, but I don't want to create a for loop up here because we want to do some stuff, as I explained before. We want to check these arrays and see what kind of black key we're going to add and what the names for them are. So instead of a for loop, we're going to use a for each loop. So the all natural notes that we have here and we're using there, let's run a for each in that. Inside this for each, we actually want to get a lot of information. First of all, the things that we can pass into the callback function here, that is going to be, let me create it first, like this, okay? And then inside our callback function here, the first thing we get is the note name. So I'm going to call it natural note because that is what it is. So that is the value of whatever item we are on in the array. And then the next one is actually we can get the index, the number, if it's from 0 to however many we have. So I'm gonna need to use that as well. And we also need the whole array. I'm gonna show you later on. So this is just gonna be the whole array, all natural notes that I'm passing in here. So inside this, well, first we of course want to create a black key, and we know how to do that because we know how to create a white key. So let's do that first. We're gonna call it black key, and that is going to be equal to this create key. We are going to pass in an object again, and we have a class name. Of course, that is going to be black key. So black key. This is the right one. After that, we need a width and a height. So the width, that is going to be half of what the white key is. So we can just take white key width that we have defined already and divide that by 2. And we need the height as well. And that height is it's going to be the piano height and something else. Of course, we don't want it to be the piano height because then it's just going to be the white keys and the black keys are going to have the same height, and that's not what we want. But last video we set them to be 250, and if you take the piano height and divide it by 1.6, you will get a number close to that. So that's gonna look just fine. So so that's it. Now we have created a black key. The next thing we want to do to this black key is adding the X attribute. So we're going to take the black key, we're going to set the attribute, and we're going to set the attribute of X, and it's going to be black key position X. We still haven't figured out how to make the spaces between the places where where they need extra space. But we'll do that in just a moment. So black key position X. All right. Okay, so now we want to add the black keys, but we want to check, we want to give them a name as well. We want to go and we want to check all of them. We're already inside a loop here, all of the natural nodes. So for every one of these natural nodes, we're also going to run a loop. And in this case, it's going to be a for loop. So for, I'm going to set I to be equal to 0. And as long as I is less than natural nodes sharps length, I'll explain that in just a moment, we're going to increment I, so I plus plus. So here I am using the natural node sharps, and that is the one we set up here as well. So that is the length of this. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long because we have 5 black keys within an octave. So so yeah, that's what we're going to do here. So for every time, this could be, I could just put 5 in here. I could also use the natural nodes flats. It doesn't really matter. It's just so it runs 5 times. Because for every single node we have in the all natural nodes array, we want to loop through that and see if it fits one of the ones in either the natural nodes sharps array or the natural nodes flats array. And then we want to set that attribute, that data attribute. So first inside here, we just want to set the corresponding values for sharps and flats. So let me first of all just type out a couple of things here. So I'm going to create a variable here, and I'm going to call it natural sharp node name. And I'm going to set that equal to natural nodes sharps, actually the one that we are running through here in our for loop. And that is going to be equal to the value of the index here, the I that we're iterating over. And I'm going to set another one for the flats. So that's going to be natural flat node name. And similarly, that is going to be natural nodes sharps and I. And let's just see what this is. I'm going to just console log this just to get a better feel for what we're doing here. So this one and this one. And then I'm going to save it and go to the browser. And we get a lot of stuff here. I think I'm just going to comment this one out here or just delete this sentence because we don't want that anymore. But as you can see here, the first one is going to be CD. Actually, it's exactly the same thing. So I think I made a mistake here. It should be a little bit different. This is natural node sharps. Of course, we want to use the flats. So what we're doing here is essentially, okay, if we start here, we have a C and a D and a C sharp. We have the sharps first. A C sharp and a D flat is the same node. It's enharmonic. A D sharp and an E flat, the same with that. And we have an F sharp and a G flat, that's also the same node. So now we actually get the pairs of sharps and flats that we want to put on the black nodes. We just put them into variables here, so it's easier to know what it actually means here. We could also just use this directly in what we're going to right now, but I hope this makes sense. So here we want to check something, and what we want to check is if, actually, let me just console log this thing again. So console log, and it's on the app object, and it is called, what's it called? Get all natural nodes. And then I'm going to save that and go, oh, we need to pass in the range, of course. Okay. So here we get that. So what I'm talking about here, first time we're going to go through this, and we're going to check is there a G here? We don't care about the octave, first of all. We just want to check if, okay, this first one here is the first character in this value. Is that equal to the stuff that we're getting from up here? From, where is it? To one of these. Because if it is, then we want to add a flat and a sharp to it. So let's check here. If natural sharp node name And this could be flat node name as well, but because we know that it every time you have a sharp, you also have a flat. So in this case, I'm using this one to iterate over. So I'm just going to keep it consistent and only use the natural sharp node name. So we know that if this is a match, then there's also a flat value for it. So if that is equal to the natural node and index number 0, that means that is only the first character, which is always a letter like C, D, E, F. We don't have the octave on it here. Then we can set the data attributes on these, and we can set data attributes for sharp names and for flat names. So we're going to take the black key that we have created already, and we're going to set attribute on that. We're going to set the sharp names first, I guess. Yeah, so data sharp name. We are going to use template strings here again. So backticks. I'm going to start with the value, with a variable. And that variable is, of course, going to be the natural sharp node name. And that's the one that we used console log before. That's the one we set up here. And because we want to add a sharp symbol to it, so here we are going to add this one here, which represents a sharp. And then after that, we of course want to get the octave number as well. So I'm going to type out this one more time. And then we're just going to take the natural node. And then this time we're going to take index number 1, which will be the octave number, right? So that will be index number 1, this one here in this case, and this is index number 0. So we're going to add that to it. So now we get the node. If it fits, then we're going to add a sharp symbol to it, and we're going to set an attribute of the data sharp name containing that. That should hopefully work. Let's do the same thing with the flat name. So black key. So they're going to have 2 different data attributes, one for the sharps and one for the flats. Set attribute. This time we want it to be the data flat name, and that is going to be equal to, well, it's basically going to be very similar to this. So let me just copy. I know it's dangerous to copy, make more mistakes. So that's going to be natural sharp node name, and of course it's going to be flat node name. And that is going to be a B. And then it's going to be, yeah, this is going to be exactly the same thing here. But we also need to figure out something about the position in here. So remember the black key position X we have here, we start at position 60, and we don't want to just spread these out with the same amount of distance between them, because we want the spacing to be bigger between where they should be bigger between D sharp and F sharp. We can do that down here. So inside this if statement, we can actually, maybe I should just add a little comment here. Add double spacing between, what's that going to be? That's going to be D sharps and A sharp, or the corresponding flat values will be, which would be E flat and B flat. So here we're going to add an additional check. So if the natural sharp node name is equal to D, because that would be D sharp, or it is equal to A, whoops, that's how you do it. If it's equal to A, then the spacing should be different. So we're going to increment it here, the one we set up here, the black key position X. So here we want it to be the white key width times 2. So we can set black key position X. We're going to add to it the width of the white key, so white key width times 2. Else we are just going to say, hey, black key position X is just going to be the same as the white key width. So black key position X is we're going to add, the white key width. Okay. And then I guess we just have to append child down here. So now that we are out of this one here, let's go after the else statement. I am just going to take the SVG and append the child of black key. And now the moment of truth. Wow. I did not expect that to work, but it does. There are no mistakes, there are no errors. So as you can see, we have it starting from C here. No, actually we got this one starting from G2. So G2, so this would be the G, this would be the A. So actually between the B and the C, we have twice as much space here. And yeah, it looks like it works. It really does. If we look inside of our elements here, we can see that first we have all the white keys, of course, and then if you scroll down, we get the black keys. And you can see this one here, that is equivalent to a G sharp and an A flat, and that makes a lot of sense. So now we have the data attributes here telling us the names of the nodes. So that's awesome, but there's one thing that we notice up here. It's going to be a little bit clear if I set the range to something smaller here. So let's just say this 4. And as you can see, we want it to go all the way to this one here, to the A4. We don't want the A sharp 4 or the B flat 4 here. So we only get like a half black key here. So we don't want that. We want to get rid of that. So we need to add another little check down here before we append the child. After this else statement, we're just going to make a check. So if we're going the last iteration, so the last time you run this loop of keys, I guess, do not add black key. So before we append the child, we're going to write another if statement, and then inside this one, we want to, first of all, we want to check the index, because remember we have the index right here. So if the index, that is the number, that is the index of the current node that we're on, of the nodes inside the all natural nodes array. If that is not equal to the array length, so this is the array that we're passing in here as well. So we get the length of the array that we're passing in. So that's just the all natural nodes length. Only then will we add this black key here. So I can take this one and I can move it up here. So what this means is that if this index here, this is going to be the index of the last value in this array. So if it's not equal to that, we can append the child. If it is equal to that, we don't want to append it. So in this case, if I save this and we go back here, see, we don't append it here at the end. So let's see if this works. We can test this out a little bit. Let's just take an A0, like a normal 88 key to piano. What is that going to? I can't actually remember that. Is that going to be C8 or something like that? I don't know. Let's see. That's a big ass piano, and it looks like it works, and we can see the values here. So now that we have the values set to data attributes on the elements, then we can work with that later on. We already covered a lot of stuff in this video, so I'm gonna end this now, and in the next video we're gonna have a look at how we can do different things with the names here and actually use it. See you.